your radio show, you were talking, I think one of your segments today was titled does the season pretty much hinge on the offensive line play? I was going to save this question for our defensive talk, so maybe we can pivot, Honky. But
here, let's do that.
Okay.
I had one.
Yeah, I'll set you up though. Is that the conversation you were having was about how maybe the offensive line might be better run blocking. You're hearing this from the coaching staff, and they're struggling a little with the pass block, right? And also, I've heard that maybe Kevin Williams Jr., Rob's good friend who was on the show, might be pushing Benhart a little bit, and Honky's been very consistent saying, Benhart is kind of a key here on whether he is going to make this happen. I guess I was my thought on pivoting the question was maybe it's the D-line is actually that good in causing some of these pass protection issues, but are you concerned a little bit with the pass protection and maybe how that dictates how they call plays this year?
Yeah, I am. I mean, I think that has been a concern in camp. Now, they are really strong on the edge, though, as we've said, and they are legitimately strong. O'Shawn's, he's capable, I think, of like 7 to 9 sacks, and Garrett Nelson's playing the best football of his career, and I think he looks more and more like an NFL player to me. Tanner, man, I hope to God they are creative and find ways to get Caleb Tanner going, because I mean people are always like, Sipple, you think way too much of Caleb Tanner. I do. I think a ton of him. That guy can play. He's just undersized in the Big Ten, trying to put his hand in the ground and play against those 6'6", 310 pounders. He gets caught up in the wash, but there's ways you can use him. So to answer your question, yeah, they have struggled in pass protection a little bit, but it's not been alarming. And when I get into that, make that distinction between pass blocking and run blocking, what I'm talking about is if you just look at this group, it looks like a run blocking group. The tackles are mammoth. Okay, like a lot of NFL tackles, you'd say, well, Sip, come on, there's 6'7" tackles, 6'8" tackles. But some of those guys look more like basketball players. These guys are mashers. They're big, thick, heavy-legged guys that look like run blockers. Now, I'm not saying they can't pass block. I think they can, but I don't know that's their strength. I don't think Bryce Benhart's strength is a pass blocker. I think he's a run blocker. Matt's right, too. Benhart's the key. If he can hold down the right tackle job, that enables him to put Corcoran at left guard. And I think they're best with Prohaska at left tackle, Corcoran at left guard. And you have the two grown men, Hickson at center and Bando at right guard. And then you got Benhart. So I like that. I don't love it, but I think they can be okay. That's the key. Don't we always say offensive line's the key? People always say that, but here's the thing: in some years, it's a higher degree than others, and I would say this is a year where it's pretty high degree. Where that's.
Mm-hmm. Let's continue. Oh, Rob,
I wanted to pivot it towards the defense and some of your notes from the scrimmage this weekend too, and I'll just read back what you wrote because it goes back. You brought up Adam Carricker earlier, and I talked with him this summer and about the defense as well. And so I just kind of wanted, and you said something in your notes, and so I wanted to kind of get a little bit more emphasis from you. You said the defense continues to come together nicely. It was strong today. I'm told it has it's had a good camp. You'd likely will see a lot of creative looks and formations from Eric Chenander. And that's one thing Character said too. He said, it doesn't matter if they go 3-4 or 4-3, because you're going to see him mixing it up and disguising a lot of defenses. And can you talk a little bit more about that? Like what you've heard, what you've seen from them in camp on that sort of stuff?
Yeah. And first of all, guys, I want to say something here before we go on. I really appreciate the fact you read this stuff.
I subscribe to On3 because of you, man.
Well, I can tell you guys, I mean, I'm not just talking about reading my stuff. You read stuff, and I appreciate that. And you guys pay close attention, and you listen, so I like that too. I mean, the big question, and actually Sam McEwen asked Eric Chenander early in camp, would you use O'Shawn Mathis and Caleb Tanner and Garrett Nelson in the same set? You know, would they be maybe all three down linemen in a set? And he said he didn't say no, and he basically said yes. And of course, that's what they're going to do at times. I mean, you'll see O'Shawn Mathis, Garrett Nelson, and Caleb Tanner on the field at the same time. I would guarantee it. So that's part of the creativity. I wonder what else is. I don't know. Like when I think of the creativity, I think of Tanner, and then I think of guys like Demario Williams and Eric Martin, and the way they moved those guys around, got pretty creative with them, and it was really beneficial. I mean, that year, remember Eric Martin, the Pelini era, and they didn't have a big time pass rusher that year, and they had to figure something out. And what they figured out was Eric Martin could do some things. I think he came out of there with 8 sacks that year. And I hope they can do something like that with Tanner. If Tanner could get you 8 sacks, man, I mean, that would be great. As far as that defense goes, look, the edges, what this comes down to me is another distinction. I'm pretty sure you're going to see the strongest pass rush we've seen in a while. But teams will negate it. They'll minimize that damage if they can just run it at Nebraska. That's what I would do. I mean, I'd just say, well, we're not going to worry about it. It's going to be third short a lot, and those guys are on the edges. We're just going to beat them in the middle. And that's where I hope they hold up. Now, I think they feel pretty good. I mean, I'm talking about their coaching staff. That they don't, I've talked to them off the record. They feel a little better than I thought about that whole picture inside. Now time will tell, but they're probably a little better than I thought going into camp. I feel better about it than I did going into camp.
Yeah.
They pulled up well in camp.
Well, you have Hutmacher and you've got Robinson and Wynn and Colton Feast. Here's a little video of Drew in his first day there about a week ago, now back on campus too. So there's a little bit of depth on the interior side there to man those two positions. We're talking defense here. The depth chart, Sip, this is what we kind of have as our depth chart.
Okay, I'm looking at the one I got, so let me see how you do here.
Sure, you can see how far. I don't like using or, but I had to use or with O'Shawn and Caleb there.
Yeah, that's fine.
Robinson and Wynn, although I think Feast could be up there too.
Feast in there right now, and maybe, in fact, I just got a text while we were sitting here. I don't mind saying this from a former player. Said Feast is their best lineman.
Is he watching the show right now? That's what I want to know.
I wonder if that's what he's doing.
That would be great. And can you tell us who it is?
No.
Rob wants to drop another name.
I don't want to drop the name. I want to just everyone to know that.
I'll tell you one thing.
Former players, we're the podcast. Former players listen.
Yeah, this guy. I would listen to this guy about any football matter. And he said his original text was. Feast is their best D lineman. He said, rephrase that, most consistent and therefore most productive. I really like him. He's a great story, Colton. He's a tough dude now.
And think of that. That's a UTN walk-on. Here's Luke Reimer, another walk-on. Again, for the people that the walk-on program's dead and all that, we're talking two guys that would be listed on the left column here. Nick Henrich. Now that Nick spot,
you got that.
I've seen now. I have Chris Klarvik here, but here I'll read something that you wrote the other day, Sip, and you go. I'm told Nickel Isaac Gifford is having a great camp.
Gifford.
I would say the job is his at this point. Both
Javen
Wright and
that'll be Gifford.
And the crazy thing though is I have heard and read different things about all three of those. Javen Wright, Kolarevich, and Gifford. I'm gonna trust you on this one here, and I'll move.
Trust me on this one. Trust me on this one. Gifford will be Nickel.
I'll move Gifford up to that. But the point is, I guess I'll look at that as a good sign that I'm hearing good things about three different people at that same position. And that's one of those positions that, at least from a differentiator, kind of like what you said with like Eric Martin 10 years ago, we didn't have a lot of those the last couple seasons. And JoJo, that position at least was something that created some differentiator for it.
It was a nice element.
Yeah. And, be interesting to see there. And then in the defensive backfield here, we have Quentin Newsom, Tommy Hill. Tommy Hill, I mean, we just seem to hear so much about him, the transfer from Arizona State, and then Miles Farmer and Marquise Buford at safeties.
Safety spots.
Yeah, you got it. I think the only ones you'd have to switch there are Kolarevich and Wynn. Colton will be in there. He's on. I mean, I'm looking at the pre-camp depth chart, and he was number 1, and as was Gifford, and Gifford has had a really good camp.
You had a question, or you made a statement here, and I'm a big believer in the 4-3 as a front. I guess I've just been saying that all off season. When we talked with Damon Benning one time, and we were like, isn't it true that you could actually need less defensive lineman bodies in a 4-man front than a 3-man front, because all 3 guys have to be a big body there. Here, in a 4-man front, between Feast and Robinson and the whole combination of Hutmacher and Wynn and Drew backing them up, so you have a rotation. You got to have 2 guys in the middle that can just plug up guard to guard. And so I've heard people say we don't have a Damien Daniels anymore. They're right. We don't. But Damien Daniels, you needed a Damien Daniels in a 3-man nose tackle, 0 guy right on the center. We don't have that right now. And that's one of the reasons I'm more comfortable than ever playing a 4-man front and having those moving O'Shawn and Nelson up, into an end spot.
Yeah, I got you. I hear you. I'm not completely. I don't dismiss the notion that Nash Hutmacher could be that guy right now. Now, he hasn't made a tackle, but I think he's ready. I hope we're maybe pleasantly surprised. I don't know that I'll be all that surprised. They got some tough kids, and he's one of them. I think he can hold in there pretty well, and he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to be a big time playmaker. He's just got to hold firm. And I think
he's got to be a body in there.
Yeah, he can. I think he can be, in that Damien Daniels mold. Damien was active though. Damien had 33 tackles last year. That's good. That's good in that position.
Oh, he was
he was at times. He was moving. He moved guys. The difference. Nash might give you more snaps. I mean, this was. Daniels couldn't play more than 30. And I think Nash might be able to give you more. He might have to give you more.
Well, here's from on 3, they did a top 10 linebacking core, and Nebraska, they had Nebraska the 9th ranked linebacking core in the country. Now, what's interesting is when we talked to Brett Ciancia at Pick 6 Previews a couple weeks ago, we were breaking down his defensive position charts, and he had D-line and linebacker, and we're like, well, where do you put Nelson? Where do you put Tanner? Where do you put O'Shawn? Are they defensive line? Or are they linebackers? And Brett's actually, like, for his preview magazine next year, he's like, I may just get rid of that. I may just call it front 7 because I'm running into this with so many teams running 3-4, 4-3 that it just mix it together and just call it front 7. But at least what on 3 is saying there. And Dave, I think you said the same thing. Phil Still had the linebacking crew, ranked, I think, 13th in the country.
Yep.
I mean, there's some accolades. Again, we're trying to find the Kool-Aid that isn't flowing from within here. And there seems to be some coming from national, ranks and outside that see that linebacking core definitely is something to be built around.
Yeah, it's always interesting, isn't it? Because we're very myopic. We fixate on one team. We know all their flaws, all their strengths. So you do kind of have to remove yourself, and it is good to get that sort of perspective. I try to zoom out a lot, which I'm pretty good at it actually, and I zoom out of a lot of things. But I do like. Okay, I mean, again, there's always these distinctions. When I think of their linebackers, I mostly think of their inside linebackers because now they're using edge guys, and I think of Tanner and O'Shawn and Garrett and Jamari Butler and Gunnarsson, different position. I focus mostly on those inside guys, and I do like them. In fact, Reimer to me is sort of a hidden, amazing story. Maybe you guys know a lot. It got by me though that he played all of last year hurt. I mean, he got hurt in August. He never was healthy last year and made 108 tackles. Now, he did get pushed around. They got pushed around at times, those 2 inside guys. They had good years. Luke had 108 and Henrich had 99 tackles. But if you're just real, if you go back and watch, they were getting pushed around a little bit in the run game at times. They're tougher than hell, though. I love them both. That those kids are the kind of kids you got to have. They will do anything they can. Neither of them are getting pressed. They're their starters. They're a little rare that way, they don't have to worry about their jobs. They're the guys, but that doesn't bother. They're not the kind of guys where that would affect them negatively.
Sip, we had a question there, and Boomer, can you put that back up about the inside linebacker depth? And it was just someone asking, can you talk a little bit more about like who do we have behind Henrich and Luke there?
Yeah, there's 3 guys in that discussion. Ativa Maga Clements has had a pretty good camp.
That's good.
Those guys, mainly Luke and Nick, talk about him. And, he came here from Diablo Valley Community College. Barrett has said he just blitzed every time when he was at Diablo.
Northern California, great.
All they did was blitz. Yeah, he had to learn how to play.
NCAA football.
Yeah, he had to learn how to play, and he has. And Ernest would be I think Ernest Hausman might ultimately be number 3, kind of a battle with those guys. And then
Columbus guy.
Yeah, Ernest, they love him. They really do. I said he and AJ Allen are the best freshmen. Ernest could see major time. I mean, I'm not. That's not my personal view. That Barrett has said that. Barrett,
including special teams. Or are you talking even just?
I'm talking about playing meaningful snaps inside.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, he's very He's very sharp in class and school. He's very sharp as a football player. He's up to 220, so he's got the physical. He's got the physical attributes. But I don't know. I'll tell you what. I think there'd be a little bit of a come on. I mean, there'd be a drop off. He's a true freshman.
Well, that's interesting though too, because one of the things that I've heard multiple people say is that you want your program at the point to where you don't need to play your freshmen, right?
Yeah.
Like right, because of development. But it's and it's seen a lot of people are saying, well, Nebraska is almost there to that point where they're building up the depth, whether it's through people coming back or through the transfer portal. But now we're talking about a kid that could get significant snaps as a freshman. So do you think that that's because of the depth, or is that because he's just coming in and proving to be way better than what they originally thought he was going to be, which was really good?
Don't think it's either or. I think it's a combination. I mean, they're not blessed with great depth at inside linebacker. Not bad. It's not bad. And I think Ernest is just he's advanced quickly, and he is advanced physically. I mean, if he passes the eye test. The big thing though with that position is you have to be smart. I mean, there's some positions that's more a requirement than others, and inside linebacker it's a requirement. You're directed traffic. So but Barrett feels comfortable with him. But man, I'm telling you, the importance of Nick Henrich and Luke Reimer can't be overstated. And I like I said, I love them. Just both those kids are like I told you, Luke played with a hip issue and a groin issue throughout last year, never said a word, had 108 tackles. He had 2 surgeries after the season. He had one right after the season, right days after the Iowa game. I think that's when he got his hip surgery. And then he went down to Houston, and it was a hernia, like a hernia type situation. So he played with a bad hip and hernia, 2 off-season surgeries. He said, I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. And he doesn't, and he didn't have the opportunity to do a lot of lifting during the off season, but he's fine. I'm excited for him because he gets to play healthy. And I think, and you know what, guys, you remember, I don't know if you remember, I remember distinctly when he was healthy in 2020, there's nobody faster to the ball on the team. I mean, and that, by the way, is an inside blitzer. I mean, that's he could figure into that pass rush too from the inside, delayed blitzes and stuff. He gets there extremely quickly.
It's exciting.
I guess we're getting to the very end here of the defense here, Sip, and I know we're getting close to the time.
Oh, we're good.
I guess let's talk secondary then. That's the last part of this, and we brought up, again, I'll bring up our depth chart that we have. And, we had Quentin Newsom Hill at corners. We had Farmer and Buford. Then behind them, Braxton Clark, Javier Morton, Kane Williams, the transfer from Alabama, Noah Pola Gates. Sure we're missing somebody there, or we've got – but
yeah, here's the deal. Let's see. Corners. Definitely Hill and Newsom and Braxton. And then I'd say Tame and Lynham would be ahead of Morton. Tame, not far, but there's an edge there for sure. So Tame and Lynham is forgotten. He gets forgotten for whatever. He was hurt. He was hurt a lot of last year. Man, I'll tell you what though, those little 40-minute looks at practice we get as a media corps. Lynham is a great looking corner. I mean, he's long, good corner,
and that would be a great sign for development too. That's a kid that's been in the program now for a year, and it's nice to see guys that can. It's great to recruit the next guy, but it's also nice to develop a guy a year over year and see that.
So important too.
Yeah. So that safety, you're right. It's Farmer and Buford, but right after them, Omar Brown has moved into a top back spot in Singleton.
That was one of the other ones.
Yeah, Omar Brown and Singleton. Kane Williams came here hurt. Now he was practicing the other day, but he came here with a shoulder issue. He's a little further down. He's just a redshirt freshman. I don't think they're expecting him to come in and win a job. He's a little down the line. Noah Paul Gates is right there, but he's not. He'd be behind Omar Brown and Singleton right now. Omar Brown has made a big impression, and Singleton. Fisher said that Singleton played at a starter's level in the spring game, and in fact, Fisher said he wishes that he drove home that night thinking, God, I wish this wasn't the last practice of spring because Singleton came on. So that you got the starters right, but right behind those guys, I'm even looking at the pre-camp depth chart. Omar Brown was 2 at 1 safety. In fact, he was behind Farmer, and Singleton was 2 behind Buford. And I would say it's more pronounced now with Omar Brown. He's moved in. He's going to play. I mean, in fact, they're so good. They're right now at safety. They feel there wouldn't be it's interesting. They feel like there wouldn't be much of a drop off if they went to Brown and Singleton. And even that edge discussion, one of the coaches told me, you know what, if we had to play Jamari Butler and Blaze Gunnarsson, we'd be in good shape. That's how good they feel about that position.
Yeah, so safety and edge feeling really solid at those spots.
Oh yeah, they're
just depth.
Deep. Yeah, deep. Not as the corner, but not in bad shape. I mean, if Quentin Newsom went down, it'd be probably an issue, but not a killer.
Well, considering what they lost at safety, that's a really good feeling.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, when you've lost Dismuke and Williams, you played so much. Boomer, can you bring up Jim's question again? I think Jim is trying to get you, Sipple, to say that somebody is at least the greatest freshman since someone else. So I mean, he did it at the running back spot. This time is Tommy Hill the greatest freshman cornerback since Dennard?
I don't know how to do that.
We love you, Jim. We love
He's
you.
not being serious.
Well, somebody commented back and said no since Deion Sanders. So I know
that's right. That's
Terrell Buckley and Sanders.
Yeah. So Jim is messing with me. I don't recognize that all the time. I don't know, Tommy. I think Tommy Hill. Tommy Hill's another of those guys that I've had a chance to interview a couple times, and there's some guys on this team. They've done a good job recruiting guys who love it. Tommy Hill just loves being a football player. And he'll be exciting. I guarantee he'll be exciting. I think you can tell him I am pretty excited. I have to rein myself in a lot because of recent seasons, and I can't get carried away in my position. But I am excited about, it's exciting talking to O'Shawn Mathis, Tommy Hill, guys like that, Stephon Wynn, Chuba, Casey's a very serious guy. And I try to emphasize to people, Casey Thompson turns 24 in October. And when you talk to Casey, you're talking to a grown man. Now, when you talk to Chuba, you're not. But the kid, but Casey's just I'll tell you one thing: pressure season. You better have a steady hand at quarterback, and Casey can handle about anything, I think.